Namo Buddhaya. Good evening. Welcome to the Buddha Dharma TV. I am Karen Tan, your host for today. We are thrilled to commence our program with a captivating Buddhist song. Our next inspiring item, featuring again the illustrious Venerable Bandera Hula, who is currently in South America, tireless working to spreading the noble teachings of the Buddha among the Dharma-loving Latino community. Here is Venerable Wahula to deliver the second part of his sermon on making the Dharma alive.
And lastly, another tip that has helped me greatly. I learned it many times, many years ago. I still use it and it works wonders. Anyway, I shower every day, I eat every day, I wash the hands many times a day, walk from one place to the other. So from one time I said, oh, my teacher told me, you say you should not shower anymore. I said, teacher, how come I don't shower anymore? No, you won't shower anymore. Now, from now on, you will meditate while you're showering. Wow, teacher, so nice. So I'm taking a shower. Anyway, the shower is happening. I'm I'm getting second benefit. I am also cultivating the mind to win-win situation. I am clean, but the mind is stable. And we can have just by, my dear family, really, it's very simple, but don't underestimate the simplicity of it. Whatever you do, eating, I will not eat anymore. Teacher, I will not eat anymore. How come? No. Now I will meditate while eating. Wow, big difference. It can be moving from place to place, opening the door, commuting from your house to your job. I won't go to my work. And the wife will say, why you don't go? No, I will meditate. while I'm going to my work. Big, big difference. So the point I'm calling with all of these tips, which is the last one, and I will make now the list so we can have a snapshot. My dear family, we need to be creative. Bring the Dhamma to the bones. What does that deep Dhamma means here, and how creatively I can make it my own, apply it in daily life, and somehow, with all respect, have fun with the Dhamma. Check, have the effort there present, but without being a dictator to myself. I will have fun with it, enjoy the Dhamma. And yes, even for the jhanas, the Buddha spoke that sukha and piti, happiness and joy, must be present. Happiness and joy makes sweet the practice and allow us to see the deepest truth, the truth of suffering, the truth of loss, etc., in another lens, and will rejuvenate our practice and bring joy, enjoy, interest, and the effort. Forget about it. It will be automatic because we are seeing the benefits. The Dhammas, the Buddha said, is beautiful at the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end. Beautiful inside, we practice generosity, we practice morality, and try to be as wise as possible. We also bring beauty to the world. So, my dear family, with that, in good time, let's take a look, let's recap. Let's recap what we have seen, some of the tips. Hopefully you find a few of them can be useful or inspiring. I will encourage you to try them all. So what we have seen today, let's take a little recap. We have seen some points. So the first one was, keep a mental frame. Ask ourselves, what does this Dhamma for deepities means here? In body, in mind, in this body, in this mind, or as in the Satipatthana is the Buddha explained, also outside. Wow, we contemplate. What does the Dhamma mean? Does that person have perception or a rupa? Then we continue growing. Next tip that we saw was knowing clearly why are we doing what we are doing. I have seen myself practicing something that stopped giving me benefit, but just because of habit, I continued practicing for years. I was wasting time. We must know very well where we are, what is the goal we are trying to achieve with certain practice, and know clearly, oh, the goal is fulfilled. I may come later for that. Let me explore with some other thing. So our practice does not get stagnant. So keep present the why. Remember the mopping story? It really changed the whole adventure. The whole effort was easy after that. Next tip is let wisdom and confidence in oneself, faith in oneself and in the Dhamma guide the effort. It will be automatic. We don't need to push ourselves when we see the benefits we are getting from the practice. Clear. Keep curious and inspired. Science will do a lot for it. Remember that pleasure and happiness are not synonyms. Be very careful for this, and let's try to pass this information to our youth and children as quickly as possible in due time and with elegance. We can have many daily reminders as we know, and the Buddha left many other tools that we can explore, and using the meditation levels. So with this, my dear family, this is the tips that we explored today. Hopefully they are useful. You can take a screenshot. And with that, everybody took the screenshot already. Hopefully some of them are useful. For me, years, some of them have a company and they are turned out to be priceless, to give a good attitude and fresh approach to the Buddha's teaching. So with that, good time. I would like to close. Let me see. Hopefully these tips can help us to keep the Dhamma alive. And because of a request, some people were asking what is happening in Mexico. So I use this opportunity that now we are together. Would you like to see the projects in Mexico? And so we can rejoice the benefits that the Dhamma is already taking over there. So I will go and I already show you. Here is where I born, in this green area, and this Mexico City is over here, and I am on the east side of Mexico. So I showed before the workshops are still going. There is also, I want to mention, there is also an English channel. It is the whole Abhidhamma Sangaha, the explanation of the Abhidhamma according to the Abhidhamma Sangaha. The 9 chapters are covered. They are explained in the way very graphically, as you saw now, using a lot of images and animations, and trying to bring it down to our daily practice. If anybody wish to take a look to the videos, the course is finished. And the channel is called Anatomy of the Mind. It's in English. If you know a friend that is interested, it is there. Something that is surprisingly happening in Mexico, then the local culture and even religion is getting more and more interested in the Buddha's teaching. So I've been invited to this university of future priests to explore what is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. As you can see, the faces of everybody, we are happily as monk brothers with different practices, but sharing, it's going very well. Another thing that is happening, as you may know, we have in Latin America, not just in Mexico, a big problem with drug addiction. So the next image might shock you. This group of people, 2,000 people there, are parents who have a children or one of member of their family in a center to go get out from addiction. Imagine, these are the parents of the children. So I've been invited to speak not just with the parents, but also with the people with the addiction, all kinds of heavy drugs, alcoholism, etc., etc. And talking, the Buddha's teaching has been very, very beneficial because it is very direct in dealing with the nature of attachment and the importance to see the practice for allowing the mind to let go, be very careful about pleasures, etc., etc., and how to balance the mind. So this retreat that you see there was for the parents, because very often they feel guilt. They feel like, what did I did wrong for my kid to go and get into drugs? Imagine horrible situations. This is the work that is done with the parents, but as I mentioned, also with the inmates. This is not a jail, but these leg centers where they, by force, often they bring them. Sometimes they need even to put an injection so they sleep, and when they wake up, they're already in the center. So you can imagine the anger or the violence, sometimes aggression that they might experience. So I've been going in Mexico to dozens of these centers. There are many. It is a plague. It is so happening in all the states, and we are exploring the Buddha's teaching and also kindness and forgiveness, because to try to ease the anger or aversion they have. So this next image, you can see they are male, female, and this next image is very shocking. When going to these centers, you can find already kids of 10 years old already in the center. So that means they were already a few years outside and they were using heavy drugs, even sometimes heroin, and the parents have the need to bring them to these kind of centers. When you start seeing these 10-year-old children, I mean, sometimes it's heartbreaking, and I want to open the invitation to all of you, my dear family, here in Malaysia. I have seen a little bit the culture. Whatever we call troubles, you compare it to the things that are happening in other parts of the world, because drug addiction is not just bringing the addiction on the kids or the general population, but the whole culture around. There are many killings because of the gangs that are trying to bring the drugs from South America to the United States. I won't get into details, but horrible things are happening, and big need for developing and promoting Sila. Imagine, just by following the 5 precepts, how, and people feels inspired, how many things will be improved. Now, another thing that we are doing, it's before the kids get into drugs, we are having activities with children and explaining them the dangers that are there and the options that they might have in order not to depend, the importance of right friendship, etc., etc. So this is part of the work that is going on. And as Brother Bobby mentioned, we have been working for the last 5 years now, 5-6 years, trying to establish, we're still on the way, a place where people can come. It hasn't yet started because it's not yet finished. can come and learn more about the teaching. So we found a piece of land near the city, but in the forest. So it's very lucky. People can go and come in the same day, no problem. And it is very suitable environment for sharing the Dhamma. It won't be a retreat center. It will be mostly like an institute for learning the Dhamma. So I show you a little bit how the project is going. This is the entrance, and you enter through a tunnel. There are 3 levels you will see now from the front, and the gardens. You are received by some fountains, and we try to incorporate the Buddha's symbols and teaching all over the architecture. A very good friend of mine from France helped with the design. I made some drawings, then he expanded them. So the door itself, entering the tunnel, is the Dhamma wheel. So when children come, we explain them about Sila Samadipanya, already using the door as a teaching tool. You come inside the tunnel, and as you arrive to the first place where you leave the shoes, we will put a Bodhi tree here. Already, when I was in India, collected some trees directly from the Mahabodhi, and after trying many times, 3 of the seeds came out. So now the trees are a little bit like 40 centimeters. So one is gonna be here, and it was gonna be taking the sunlight that the photo was taking at night. So from the top, and then you come in more tunnel, and this is one of the rooms. And then you climb the stairs to the classroom, dining hall, and Dhamma classroom will be like a Dhamma sharing space. This is the view from, very fortunate. The land is not very big. It's like 1,000 square meters, but it is just on the edge of the forest, and the forest is a protected area. So it feels like you're in a very big monastery because you can just go outside and walk and walk and walk. It's 100 hectares of forest. So you can walk for a long time, anytime, because it's protected around with a fence. So you can even walk in the night. So this is the view. One of the toilets still need to do some finishing in the flooring, glass work. We also designed it to teach the kids about samsara, life and death, and how we can purify the mind until we attain nibbana, etc., etc. This is the view of the place from the garden in front. We came from the back into the tunnel, into the middle level. So you come into the middle, and you can either go up to the Dhamma sharing area, dining hall, and Dhamma classroom, or down to 2 other rooms. It actually only have 3 rooms, 1, 2, 3. And this is the meditation room, where the big Buddha from Burma, we were lucky to find it and make it come to the monastery. And you can see here with the local people, some native people are coming. Everybody's very interested. And for you to know how much work is needed to be done, the first question everybody or many people does is this the Buddha? And then I say, yes, that's the Buddha. And why he's not fat? That's the first. Oh my God. Again, here we go. I have to explain. And then they ask, can it give me a blessing? And as you can see, they bring flowers and fire, because it's some people from the local tribes around, they are still around. They have this sense that everything comes through blessing. Then it's a very good opportunity to speak about the Mangala Sutta, etc., etc. So very interesting. But yes, my dear family, a lot of work still to be done there. And also already is benefiting the Dhamma. But anyway, I don't know when I'm going back, but we'll continue there. We also made a stupa. Lastly, this is around the size. And this is the view from the monastery facing the forest. You can walk as far as you can. And you can also do walking meditation around. We made some walking paths around, so you can do endlessly around and around, or in any direction. So can also practice also in these levels. So that's what's happening. I share in order that we all rejoice and know that the Dhamma, it's already bringing benefits to my own family. My own mother has improved in many senses, her attitude towards life in general. So I cannot be more blessed by the Dhamma in such sense. And also many kids, and as you see, more people will be benefit, and I will continue trying my best. So I will hand over for that's for my side. I will ask finally and pass the time for Brother Bobby, if he could also help me to put in the chat. There is a Flickr album with these photos and more. If you are interested in looking at them, you can take a look. And from my side, my dear family, may all these tools and inspiration help us to continue making the Dhamma alive, close to us. It's on you, Brother Bobby. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bante, for your very inspiring talk on making the Dhamma alive. Very practical tips. And so, some of you may be wondering, looking at the building, that Bante must have a lot of support from Mexico. Is that true?
Well, unfortunately, as you know, the Dhamma, it's just getting planted there. So the culture, no, it's not there. So actually, the whole monastery was built with the savings. When I was working as a lay person, I was a musician and a teacher. So with my ex-wife and I, the savings that we had for 10 years before I knew I wanted to become a monk, as far as we have arrived with the monastery, were used. Also, one auntie of her helped with one part. So until how we arrived, it was used by that. But no, unfortunately, the culture, Catholic culture, doesn't have this sense of support, because generally the church have support from the Vatican, or I don't know how they find. And generally people is not with this attitude as we find in Asia, for example, where Buddhism is established. So we are trying our best to do whatever, and also sharing to the people the importance of generosity, etc., etc. But until I come back, I will see how we're gonna arrange, even for alms round. I'm not sure yet where or how I'm going to do it, but I think everything will work out. The Dhamma works way.
Welcome to Thailand, a magnificent and renowned hub of Theravada Buddhism. Millions from around the world embark on pilgrimages to this culturally vibrant nation in pursuit of inner harmony. Today, we are privileged to have the most vulnerable Ajahn Punadamo from Toronto, Canada, looking into the rich tapestry of early Buddhist history with a special focus on Thailand. Please join us for this insightful journey.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So in the previous series, we talked about the formation of Theravada Buddhism through the various schools in India and the establishment of Sri Lanka as the home country of Theravada Buddhism, and in particular the Mahavihara Monastery, which became the seat of orthodoxy in Theravada Buddhism, and really the origin of all the Theravada bhikkhus in the world could probably almost certainly trace their ordination through the Mahavihara. And in this presentation, I want to talk about another very important Theravada country, Burma, and the development of Buddhism in Burma over the centuries. To begin with, I'd like to just clarify a point of terminology. The official name of Burma is now Myanmar, and I'm going to basically just use Burma because it's easier, and it's kind of the established traditional name. The name Myanmar was decided upon by one of the recent military governments, and the ostensible reason is it's more inclusive of the other ethnic groups in Burma. But this doesn't seem to really make sense, because the word Myanmar is actually a literary or poetic name for the Burman people. So it doesn't seem to make sense. It's just changing one name for the same group for another. Burma is not a unified country ethnically. It's quite diverse. There are different groups there. Historically, there's been 4 groups that are of some importance. There's many other smaller groups. There's the Burman people themselves, who came to be the dominant ethnic group within that region. But there's also the Mons, who are people that no longer have an independent country, but they still exist as an ethnic group in parts of Burma and Thailand. But at one time they had a very flourishing civilization, and were probably the more in the early times they were probably the more sophisticated and advanced culture in Burma, through the influence of Indian traders. They were mostly like in the southeast of the country. There's the Shan people in the northeast, who are somewhat related to the Thais. They're part of the same migration of peoples that were driven south by the Han expansion, previously living in what's now southwest China. And finally, there's the Pyu people, Pyu. This is a group that no longer exists as an independent group. They were merged in with the Burmans, but they had one of the earliest civilizations in the upper Irrawaddy Valley. So this is just the barest outline of a background to make sense of the complicated history behind Burma. When we turn to Burmese Buddhism, which is the real theme of this talk, the earliest events are the legendary visits of the Buddha to Burma. Now these can be doubted that they actually historically occurred, but they're an important part of Burmese legendary history, that the Buddha went twice to Burma. The first one involved the monk Puna, who incidentally I was originally named after. That was my name when I was a novice, was just Puna, and I think I was named after this character. He was from Burma, and a place called Suparanta, and he went to India and learned, studied with the Buddha, and then asked to return to his home country and spread the Dhamma there. And the Buddha first tried to discourage him and said, the people of Suparanta are wild and fierce and rough. You don't want to go back there. And he said, no, I'm not afraid, let me go. And so the Buddha let him go. And then after some time, he sent a message to the Buddha talking about how he was having some success, and the Buddha decided to visit him. And he went in like a magical caravan that Sakka, the king of the gods, created 500 magical palanquins that the Buddha and 499 Arahant bhikkhus flew through the air to Suparanta. And after he had visited with Puna and preached to the people there, on his return journey, he visited a Naga king, Namada, also in Burma. And during this visit with the Nagas, he left in the stone 2 footprints that are still apparently visible and are a place of pilgrimage in Burma. The second visit was to the king Chandra Surya, the king of Dhanawanti in Arakan, that had established a wish to go to India to visit the Buddha. And the Buddha, with his psychic power, knew that the king wanted to travel to India, but he said that the journey would be rough and dangerous, and I'll save him the trouble. And he went to, again by magical means, he went to Burma to visit this king. And after staying a while, when he was ready to leave, the king begged him to leave a relic for them to worship. So they wanted an image So Saka, the king of the gods, again assisted in this and made an image of the Buddha by magical means. And the Buddha breathed on it. It is said to then have transformed to look exactly like the living Buddha, so you couldn't tell the two apart. And it's called the Mahamuni image, and that image still exists in Burma, although it's been covered by quite a bit of gold foil, so that it's a bit obscured. And it's a place of reverence and great worship, and it's still one of the important pilgrimage sites in Burma. It was originally in Arakan, but in 1784, King Bodapaya conquered Arakan and transported the image to Mandalay. And this is part of the centralization of the Burman state. And this was something we see a lot in the history of Southeast Asia, that when kings conquer another kingdom, they'll take the most holy relics and statues and bring them back to their capital. That's the case of the Emerald Buddha in Thailand. It was similarly moved from Laos. There's another incident that actually probably has some historical basis. In the Pali Canon, there's the story of the Buddha after he was enlightened under the Bodhi tree. The first people he met were two merchants, Tapusa and Balika, and they became his first disciples, and he gave them the two refuges. It's only two because the Sangha did not yet exist at that time. And they begged him for a relic, and he gave them some hairs from his head. And these merchants are said to be from Burma. They traveled back to Burma and enshrined the hair in a stupa, which is another pilgrimage place in Burma, is the Shwedagon Pagoda. The first real historical entry of the establishment of Theravada Buddhism in Burma was with Asoka's missions. King Asoka sent, after the Third Council, he sent missions to many other countries to spread the Dhamma. And one of these countries that's listed is Suwana Bhumi, which means the Golden Land, and that's thought to be somewhere on the Burmese coast. It was probably to Indian colonies in the area that they first went. There was an establishment of Indian traders and colonists on the coast of Burma in those days, so they were already culturally part of the Indian sphere. So that they were probably the first recipients of the Asoka's missions. But it's said that the missions also converted one of the local kings, and this began the establishment of Buddhism in Burma. In the another famous visit to Burma was in the 5th century A.D. Buddhaghosa, the great commentator, traveled to Burma. Some Burmese accounts claim that he was originally born in Burma, although this seems unlikely. His biography in the Sinhalese version has him coming from northern India, and he certainly seems in his writings to be more part of the Indian cultural sphere than Southeast Asian. But in any case, it's said that he visited Burma, and there's one kind of charming story about his visit, that when he first landed, a mole crawled out of the earth and felt reverence towards this holy man and offered some straw. And because of this act of merit, this mole in a future time became born as one of the great kings of Burma. So Buddhism was established in Burma from this early time, from Asoka's time, which was 220 something BC. And it spread slowly. The Pew people in the north became very devout Buddhists, at least by the 4th century. In fact, the oldest known surviving Buddhist scriptures, physical scriptures that we have, are from the Pew region of Burma, inscribed on gold plates. There's a few sections of suttas inscribed on these gold plates that have been found by archaeologists. But Buddhism was not the only religion in Burma, and this continued for a long time. That there was Hinduism and also Mahayana Buddhism, and the native animism, which centered largely around the worship of what they called Nats, which were basically Nagas, like serpent or dragon beings. And this was a very important part of Burmese belief for a long time, even down to the present. The Burman people came in from the north towards the end of the first millennium AD, and it seems the Burmans are related to the Tibetans. They have their language has some similarities to Tibetan, and they early on followed a form of Vajrayana Buddhism that was called Ari Buddhism, that was existent in Burma for a long time, as well into early modern period. It was a form of tantric practice, and it was often denounced by the Orthodox Theravadins as being corrupt and decadent. The monks of the Ari tradition not only drank liquor, they performed animal sacrifices, and some of their rites involved sexual acts. So they were very kind of wild, backwoods, tantric type practitioners. And they became for a time very powerful, became very rich, and they owned, at one time they owned great tracts of land and had a great deal of economic power. In the 11th century, there was a great Burmese king, Anarata, who established the first unification of most of what's now Burma by conquering the Mon territories. And the Burmans at that time were at a lower level of civilization. They were more kind of barbarian, and the Mons had a more sophisticated civilization. So as often happens in history, when a barbarian kind of people conquer a more civilized one, they adopt the culture of their conquered people. And the Mon culture influenced the Burmans after that. So the Burmans began to adopt Theravada Buddhism. And one very important figure in this process was a monk called Shin Arahan. Shin is a title. It's like a venerable one, or Bante. Shin Arahan, who became a close confidant of he lived a very long time. He died quite old, and he was a confidant of 3 successive Burman kings, and promoted the conversion of the country to Theravada Buddhism. In 1070, the king sent some bhikkhus to Sri Lanka to reestablish the proper ordination there. This was one of several cross-cultural exchanges between Burma and Sri Lanka, which became very important in later times. This was after the period in Sri Lanka when the Cholas, the Hindu Cholas of South India, had conquered Sri Lanka and ruled it for 70 years. And the Sangha was somewhat persecuted and dispersed, and they were in need of reestablishing proper ordination lineage. So the monks came from Burma to do that. And this established a friendship between the two countries. And in return, the king of Sri Lanka sent scriptures back to Burma, the Tipitaka, so that the Burmese now had a complete Tipitaka. And part of this interchange with Sri Lanka involved the repeated several times through Burmese history a reform of the Sangha. The Burmese had sent monks to help the Sri Lankans, and sometime later the Sri Lankans returned the favor when one of the kings of Burma, Uttarawidya, decided that the Sangha had gotten corrupt and they needed to reinvigorate it. So he asked for monks to come from Sri Lanka and start a new ordination lineage and to reform the Vinaya. And this caused the first schism because some of the monks didn't want to follow the new lineage, and they stayed with the old lineage of Shin Arahan. It was a more native Burmese lineage, so that the two coexisted for some time until the older lineage died out. The civilization of Burma now in from 1100 roughly to the late 1200s was centered in the city of Pagan in the north, and this city is known for even today for as a tourist destination to see all the multitude of stupas that have been built there. This became a great activity, a building activity of the kings to show their faith in the Buddhist religion. They would build stupas, and there's thousands of these gold-plated stupas all around Pagan. Some authorities think that this excessive building of stupas actually ruined the Pagan economy and began the decline of that civilization, that they went to such extremes with this. Pagan was also noted for the beginnings of serious Buddhist scholarship in Burma. The Burmese from this time on put a good deal of emphasis on study, and it was a highly literate culture. The estimate is that because of the excellent monastic schools, up to 50% of the population, the male population, were literate, and maybe about 10% of the female population, which is a very high number for that world compared to other countries in the world at that time. And the areas of study that they took particular interest in was, first of all, Pali grammar. There's a number of Pali grammars and dictionaries and so on that were developed at that time. And then a little bit later, they began to get into Abhidhamma studies, which became a very great specialty of Burma, the study and promulgation of Abhidhamma. now we move forward in time. After the fall of Pagan was in 1271, when the Mongols invaded, and the whole country was. The Mongols didn't stay, but they disrupted things enough that it finished off the Pagan dominance. And for a while, the Shan people became the dominant group in Burma for the next few centuries. One of their kings, Dama Zedi, shortly in 1470, he reigned from 1472 to 92, and he was a Mon ruler. He did another one of these periodic reforms of Buddhism by bringing monks over from the Mahavihara, and also besides purifying the Vinaya, he also made efforts to promote the keeping of the 5 precepts by lay people, banning animal sacrifice and alcohol. And he used a method of punishing bad bhikkhus. He didn't, because the king actually did not have authority directly to punish a bhikkhu who was living outside of the Vinaya, but he could punish their families, which is what they did. If you didn't listen to the king, then your family would suffer for it. There was one Shan king who, in the 1500s, who attempted to destroy Buddhism and persecuted the Sangha and the bhikkhus, and this was a short-lived phenomena. Sangha soon recovered, and Theravada Buddhism remained the dominant religion in the country. In the 1500s, the Burmans again came to the fore, and really have remained so ever since. They established what's called the Taungoo Empire, and again there was culturally, although politically it was dominated by the Burmans, it was culturally influenced by the Mons, and there were again more contacts with Sri Lanka and the Mahavihara, and there was a concerted effort to bring the practice in terms of the doctrine and the Vinaya and the ways of behaving in line with the standards established by the Mahavihara, which throughout this whole for many centuries was regarded as the source of orthodoxy and proper practice. It was like the center of Theravada Buddhism in the world was this Mahavihara in Sri Lanka. At this time, the practice of animal sacrifice was finally wiped out. This was something that had been going on all the time, more or less behind the scenes. Even though the country was officially Buddhist, there was a lot of still pre-Buddhist influences, and the Ari bhikkhus were still around, although they were now fading, and the end of the Ari or Vajrayana bhikkhus is dated to this period. This tantric Buddhism died out at this time. But what did survive even down to the present day are what are called Weska, which is a Burmese word that's a corruption of the Pali Wijadara, which means like magic wielder or wizard. And these are men who practice various kinds of occult spells, do astrology, and they're only very tangentially related to Buddhism. They do astrology, and their belief is that if you a perfect adept in their system, then you'll become an immortal wizard. And they still exist in Burma today, and people go to them for astrological predictions or for curings and so on. And they may be, it's possible that this Waiska movement came out of the Vajrayana Ari Buddhists, but it's not certain. Under King Sane in the late 1600s to early 1700s, a controversy started that was to last 100 years. That seems like a great deal of fuss over something very small, but it really disturbed the Sangha for a long time. There was a controversy over whether it was proper to wear the robe with one shoulder bare outside the monastery. And according to the Vinaya, the bhikkhus are supposed to, while they're in the monastery, they wear the robe such that one shoulder is not covered. And when they go on alms round or they go into the village for any reason, they're supposed to fold the robes a different way and cover both shoulders. But was a group of monks who said, no, that's wrong. We're supposed to wear the robes just the one way all the time and leave the shoulder bare. And this became like a huge controversy and caused conflict and even some violence between the two groups of monks. And the kings at that time still had a lot of influence and say over Sangha affairs. And some kings favored the one-shoulder monks and some favored the two-shoulder monks, and it went back and forth. And it reminds me somewhat of, if anyone's read Jonathan Swift and the Lilliputians and the dispute between the big enders and the little enders. It's almost the same sort of thing. But this went on for like 100 years. But this wasn't the only thing that was happening at the time. There was also in the 17th century the beginning of translating Buddhist texts into Burmese language, which allowed more lay people to be able to read the scriptures, and generally only the monks would learn Pali. So we now have translations, particularly of Abhidhamma again. The Burmese always seem to be fascinated by Abhidhamma. And translations of Abhidhamma and Abhidhamma treatises and commentaries were translated into Burmese language for the first time. Then in the late 18th century, we have the great king Bodhipaya, who finally settled the question of the robe wearing issue by calling a great council and making its decision. Okay, from now on, this is how you do it, and it was settled it the way which is actually the way according to Vinaya, that you wear the robe with one shoulder in the monastery and two shoulders without. And as part, and though this was the kind of the first business of this council that he called, but it went beyond that. He produced or instigated what are called the Sudhamma or Good Dhamma reforms to reform the Vinaya and keep everything in line. And he established it for the first time, an institution of a council of elders, senior bhikkhus, who would be the official guardians of orthodoxy and the governors of the Sangha in general, the Sudhamma Council. Then in the early 1800s, again in a relationship with Sri Lanka, they sent bhikkhus to Sri Lanka to reestablish the order there, which had diminished after a long period of political turmoil in Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka, of course, now is under British rule. And they sent monks to Sri Lanka to reestablish an order, the Amarapura Nikaya. This is something we see in all the Theravada countries, that there are several competing ordination lineages. So in Sri Lanka, the older lineage was the Siam Nikaya that was established out of Thailand. But they, at some point, under royal pressure, they imposed a rule that commoners were not allowed to ordain, only members of the noble caste, which is contrary to the Buddhist teaching. So at this time they asked to reestablish a new lineage that would be open to everyone, which is what happened. Now the British were now becoming a dominant power in the region, and they conquered Burma in stages. In the early 19th century, they conquered part of Burma in the south and west, bordering on British India. And so this created a new situation, because there was a good region, a large region of Burma that was no longer under the control of the king or the Sudama Council. And this had both positive and inadvertent, or negative and inadvertently positive effects. On the negative side, it did allow a lot of laxity, and many of the bhikkhus began to fall into lax ways and loose vinaya. But on the positive side, the presence of the Sudama, or the dominance of the Sudama Council, although it had a good intention, just the bureaucratic nature of such a council controlling everything in the Sangha did not allow for new developments or creative expression by the bhikkhus in the practice. So when the power of the Sudama Council was lessened in this way, this allowed the beginning of the Vipassana movement. That there were several bhikkhus who at this time began to promote the idea that meditation, particularly Vipassana meditation, was more important than chanting or ritual or merit making. And they began to establish these monastic centers of meditation. One of the first famous teachers in this regard was a man called Madawi, who actually began even before the period of British conquest and overlapped with it. He was the first famous teacher of Vipassana, and his system was based on contemplation of the three characteristics across the five aggregates. Now we had with the British ruling part of India, the remainder of Burma was under for the last period of Burmese independence, was under the reign of King Mindon, who is remembered in Burma with great affection. He was considered, this is like the Indian summer of independent Burmese civilization. He was considered to be a great king and a very strong supporter of Theravada Buddhism. One of the actions of his reign was to hold what's called the Fifth Buddhist Council from 1868 to 1871, when he brought bhikkhus from other Buddhist countries, and they went through the whole Tipitaka to try and correct any discrepancies or errors between the recensions, because the Tipitaka by this time existed in Burmese, in Sinhalese, and Siamese alphabets, and separate traditions of copying and recension over the centuries. So it was an attempt to reconcile any small discrepancies and establish an authoritative text. He also supported the Vipassana movement, and in this time, the monk Ledi Sayadaw began his career, and he's a very important figure in the Vipassana movement. He's written numerous books. Several of his books are translated into English, and they're very technical and very heavily oriented towards Abhidhamma interpretation of mind states that are experienced in Vipassana. So we see this in Burmese Buddhism has this particular characteristic that began really in Pagan with the emphasis on Abhidhamma studies, and then in the later period with Vipassana. These two aspects go together very well, Vipassana and Abhidhamma. One is the theory and one is the practice of examining mind states in detail. That brings us pretty close to modern times, and of course the Vipassana movement in Burma continue to develop, and we have great teachers like U Ba Khin, Mahasi Sayadaw, and Goenka, who all came out of the Burmese tradition and all have some influence of Ledi Sayadaw in their lineage. He was like the great grandfather of all these traditions. And these Burmese Vipassana traditions have now spread around the world and have had influence in other Buddhist countries. Mahasi Sayadaw and Goenka particularly have been practiced in Thailand and in Sri Lanka, and also in the West. We have a lot of meditation centers that have been established in the West that are based on either Mahasi Sayadaw method or on Goenka's method. And these are all have their roots in Burma. And you can trace them back to Ledi Sayadaw. So that's a brief capitulation of Burmese Buddhism and its trials and tribulations, its connections with and interface with Sri Lanka, and its emphasis on Abhidhamma and Vipassana.
all for today. If you have any concerns or questions, don't please hesitate to reach out to us at info@buddhatharmatv.com. Thank you for watching, and I'm sure that our programs on Buddha Dharma TV will be a source of inspiration for many of peace lovers around the globe. Good night. Namo Buddhaya.